Yeah.
Around the world, there has always been strife. People fight for power, greed, and monetary gain. Kingdoms and families are torn apart, and worlds start to burn. But Athens rose above the violence. Athens stood tall against the grievances of others and decided to make an example for everyone else. They created a democracy, a place where every man is free to make a choice in his society, a place where greed and power have a place.
Or so it is supposed to be. But not always can there be a perfect solution. In this present day, Athens there is still war raging on. Underlying the symbol of freedom, there is a new type of tyranny. The most democratic part of the assembly is a group called the Eleutheria, or Freedom. The group is led by Exopato, a wealthy merchant who has lived in the city his entire life. Over time, he has acquired a taste for the power of influencing others, and with that, he and the other members of the Eleutheria have control over the assembly. Most of the other members of the assembly are either too frightened to say anything, or are indebted to Eleutheria, and therefore all the cards lay in their hands.
However, as the years have passed, people have become restless. Some say that Athena started the Whispers herself, but rebellion seems to be evident, and soon. The rebellion is said to be led by a man called Zosimus, a previous general in 2 wars, and the owner of one of the biggest farms in Athens. He is the one man that threatens the power of Eleutheria. Many supporters of the rebellion have mentioned him becoming a benevolent tyrant, and that is something that Eleutheria won't stand for.
Cyrus Hippotos, my dear friends, we cannot ignore the threat of this rebellion any longer. Every day draws closer to war and the end of our power.
Agreed. Something must be done.
But what shall we do? If we ease up our hold, then we will surely lose our grip. But if we tighten any more, then we will cause the rebellion to start early.
I don't know at this time. Please, each of you go walk and ponder this. I'll do the same. Maybe the gods will bless us today and restore our democracy.
The men part ways to ponder the most troubling of questions. Exopato took with him a lunch and wandered into a neighboring farmer's orchard. It was close to the end of the season, so the rows were barren of workers. He saw an empty clearing ahead of him and was about to head towards it when he heard someone else walking toward the orchard.
Who could be here today of all days? The fields are empty of fruit and the workers, and Apollo will finish his daily ride soon enough.
Peeking into the next row, he saw a woman standing there. She looked very strange for an Athenian woman, with flowing white robes and a dagger strapped to her side. It almost sounded like she was whispering to the trees. Before Exopato could do anything else, she snapped her head around and glared at him.
Mortal, why are you walking in the orchard this late in the day?
I've come to clear my mind of the issues plaguing my city, my lady.
What issues? I've heard of no problems.
As you are a woman, I'm not surprised. For the issues I speak of are of democracy and the rights of men.
Suddenly, it was as if the electricity itself swept down to cover the earth. The woman's eyes seemed caught on fire, and her hair whipped in the wind.
As you are an ignorant man, you obviously have no idea who stand before you, for I am the goddess of justice and democracy, and it is those rights which you speak of that I stand for.
Please forgive me, goddess. I didn't know.
You mortals never do. Now what are these problems you speak of?
Now Exopato was not the leader of Eleutheria for no reason. He knew the power to persuade, and the chance to have a goddess on his side was not one he was going to give up lightly.
Before I begin, would you care to join me for dinner? My tale is long and my tongue is parched. And what better way to hear a tale of woe than with the finest wine in all of Greece?
That sounds like as good a reason as any.
And so they sat and dined together. Exopato told her of the struggles of him and his fellow Democrats as they watched the city slowly fall into ruin. Democracy was failing, and there had to be some way to make things right. Obviously, he left out the part about how his group controlled the assembly and that he was the reason that there was a problem, but there was still enough points to make his case. He spoke well until night, and all of the food and wine was gone. When his story was finally finished, Dike was well intoxicated and well convinced.
This is ridiculous. I stand for justice, and justice is democracy. I will fight and turn the city back under my own rule.
What kind of a plan was this? Is this really the best idea? I had no intention of bringing her in as the new goddess. What will Athena think? However, Athena has done nothing for us so far, no matter how hard we've prayed. Maybe this is her blessing to us. Come, goddess. Tonight is the night to plan, and in the morning we can act. Let us return to my house where we can discuss this with the others.
That night, the Eleutheria went to Exapato's house along with Dike, and they plotted on how to return Athens to its former glory. Wine was continually passed around to keep the thoughts flowing, and soon they had come up with a plan. That morning they would go to the Acropolis and announce that she was taking the city under her divine control. She would then explain how she was restoring democracy back to its full glory and how the entire city would reap the benefits. Of course, the men knew where these benefits were really going.
Athens, I am Dike, the goddess of justice. I am the goddess of right and wrong, the goddess of democracy. And starting today, I am the new goddess of Athens. I have heard too much of how this city is suffering, and I have come back to bring it to the freedom it once had. Freedom where everyone has a voice, and where they're all judged fairly. Tomorrow, dear Athens, the new reign will begin an emergency meeting at the Pnyx. All must be in attendance to hear the latest laws.
The crowd that had begun to surround her erupted, some in anger, some in delight. Those who were angry were some of the main supporters of the rebellion. On Dike's and Excapito's word, these people were captured and brought to the Agora, where they were publicly humiliated. They tried searching for Zosimus, but he had disappeared, probably hidden by some of his more quiet supporters.
After a long day of influencing, the Eleutheria and Dike went back to Exapato's house. As dinner was being prepared, some of the men began to discuss whether they should continue to trust the goddess. They wanted their laws passed and the government shaped in the best way for them, as most men do. And so they planned to drug Dike into a stupor so she could listen and be influenced even more so by their ideas.
As the food was served, Exapato brought out more of his finest wine. Everyone was served a large portion, and soon many of the men were drunk themselves. As they talked and joked around, the goddess brought her glass to her lips when she heard a voice.
Please, goddess, no, do not drink the ale. Listen to the men as they speak their tales. Choose to listen with ears of steel rather than ears that are blinded by the meal. If justice you love, then spare me at least this. Do not drink tonight. Just wait, I insist.
Who speaks? What mystery voice is this? What could these words mean? Maybe I should do as they say and refrain from drink tonight. I can act as if I'm drunk, but just to see what could have happened if I was.
It was not long until the goddess got her wish. The men began to speak of politics and acting like the drunken listeners they believed her to be. She slowly began to pick up on their plan. She saw the greed for power that gleamed behind each man's eyes. Surrounded by them all, she saw how they had been manipulating her. In a flash of anger, the cup in her hand shattered. The crowd grew silent and all turned to make sure she was okay. She said she was fine, but on the inside, she was plotting. For a goddess's wrath is matched by none, but fear by all.
The next morning, the goddess had her plan set. She would wait until they got to the Pnyx. Then, instead of instating the laws that the men spoke of last night, she would do the exact opposite. Ruin the democracy and blame it all on them. Then, they would realize exactly what happens when you try to mess with the divine.
Once they reached the assembly, the men's spirits were high. This was the day that was supposed to change their lives forever. This was the day that they were supposed to become kings. They never knew what was coming. The first few laws the goddess imposed were okay. They were a bit stricter than expected, but they still matched what they deemed to be an ideal society. Then everything started to change. Dike started giving more and more complicated and strict laws. The people started to panic. Some tried to protest, but she demanded that they would be sent away from Athens. Entire families were forced to leave.
The men, sitting at her right-hand side, truly felt what real fear was. They would be the first blamed for things if they kept going as they were. By the end of the assembly, half of Athens had been banned from the city. The other half was living in fear under the new laws that had been enforced and the government that they no longer understood.
Gentlemen, it has been a pleasure. However, I have some much needed work to do. I'll see you tomorrow's eve.
What are we to do? She has destroyed half the city, and the rest is now terrified for their lives, including us.
She must have caught on that something was going on. Why else would she behave in such a manner?
What is the plan, Exapito? We surely are not safe in the city with our name plastered on every new law the blasted goddess came up with.
Wait, do you guys hear that? That sounds like a riot!
Quick, into the house!
They might have thought Exapito's house would provide them shelter, but they were wrong. This was the first place the rebels were going to. The men were captured and dragged into the basement. They were beaten or killed, and those who survived were forced to watch as the rebels took everything. The valuables, the food, the wine, all of it was gone. One of the men kicked Exapito on the way out and laughed at how fair their democracy was now.
Sir, do you not think it is high time we pray to Athena to stop this madness? Athens is crumbling before our very eyes. It is obvious that we need the help of beings much more powerful than ourselves.
Hippolytus, I cannot simply call upon Athena. We are perfectly capable of handling this on our own. We just need a plan. Besides, Athena would not answer our prayers. We have disgraced her and let this happen to her city knowingly. We are unworthy of her help.
What are you men doing? I leave you alone for a few hours and you mess everything up. The city is in ruins and the people are running rampant with no direction or control at all.
Please, goddess, you must help us. We have disgraced ourselves. We were drunken on the taste of power. But you must help us fix the city.
Why should I help you? I am the goddess of justice, the one who rights wrongs, and you are the one of those wrongs. I will leave you here and wait 2 days to decide what I should do with you. Until then, you stay here. If you leave or someone kills you, then I will consider that justice.
What are we to do now? Do we just wait for her to return, or do we do something?
We could always pray
Enough!
to Athena.
I need time to think. All is not lost. Do you not think I wouldn't save some of my stash for me? We still have a bit of food and wine. And it sounds like we might as well use it while we still have time. We'll come up with our plan tomorrow. My men are either dead or stranded here with me, waiting to die. I've destroyed my city in a quest for power and the perfect democracy. I've shamed myself in front of a goddess and will be surely sent straight to the underworld for my greed. Wait, what is that noise? More rebels? There's nothing left here to take. Quick, men! Get up and rally yourselves. This may be the last few moments of your life.
No sooner had he said this that the basement doors were broken open. The group of rebels looked tired and battle-worn. Each had a murderous expression on their face as they looked at the men that had trapped them. The leader stepped forward to speak to them.
Well, this certainly wasn't the way I expected things to go.
I should have known it was you, Zosimus.
Not all of this was you. My men have just finished cleaning the town from those who only wish to do you harm. This democracy you dreamed over is over. I have been voted as the new ruler of Athens. You and your men are hereby arrested for treason against Athens and her people, and a plot to rule by influencing a goddess.
How can you know this? You've been gone for a few days.
Your goddess is very informative, especially when mad. I snuck into your house the other night as you tried to drug her and warned her of your plan. And now we find ourselves here. I'm done with the words of the likes of you. Men, take all but Escapo away.
The men were all dragged upstairs. Escapito was held separate and forced to watch as each of the rest of his men were beheaded. The screams seemed to echo into the night. After it was all over, the men beat him and left him for dead in his own house. In a fit of desperation, Escapito fell on his knees and began praying earnestly to the gods, asking for any kind of forgiveness or help for him or his city. After hours of crying and pleading, he fell into a fitful sleep.
Rise, Escapito. Do not waste my time by making me ask again.
Are you here to kill me or to save me?
Maybe one, maybe both. I'm the goddess Nemesis, the goddess of correction and retribution. I've been listening to the events down here for a while, but I never knew how bad it was getting. I've removed my sister from power, and I'm working with Zosimus and the other gods to rebuild Athens. However, in all of this grief, there must be some retribution.
Just tell me what I must do, goddess. What payment must I make?
After considering all the options, there is only one left. You have caused enough trouble for 10 lifetimes, and for that, you do not get the luxury of using the one you have been given.